Supercars have just wrapped up an action-packed weekend of racing in Tasmania, from an underdog victory on the Saturday to clashes and controversy on the Sunday. There is so much to unpack, which is exactly what we're going to do here today on my Round 8 review on Fan at the Fence. Just a quick disclaimer, we've got some wild weather rolling through Perth at the moment, so you might hear some wind and rain in the background. I'm just going to push through it today, but let's start off with the Percat's perfection that we got to see on Saturday. It was a good strategic race, which is something we rarely get to say about the SuperSprint events, but it was a good pressure motor race, and all eyes were on Feeney and Cameron Waters for the lead. They were the top two on the road. They caught up to some lap traffic after they did their first stops, but it was Nick Percat and Matt Stone Racing who pulled a blinder and actually overcut those two headline drivers and took the lead. Nick Percat survived the opening laps on those cold tyres, despite the two behind being very close to him, and ultimately went on to take the victory. It wasn't all smooth sailing though. He had to survive a late race charge from Chaz Mostert and WAU, who pulled a strategic blindside, getting that car onto 3 new tyres and allowed him to charge through the pack, very much quelling the concerns most have, including myself, about their form on the super soft tyre. It wasn't enough though. They got onto the podium but didn't quite get that victory. That honour went to Nick Percat, and what a fantastic story that is. Nick Percat, this time last year, was down in the dumps at WAU, not knowing if he even wanted to continue his Supercars career, and a year on he's getting yet another victory with this underdog team, and it's such a great story for all involved. Alright, let's take a deep breath and move on into the Sunday Mayhem. So much happened in that race, but let's start with the results. Of course, Cameron Waters took a great victory over Will Brown in second, and a huge shout out to Bryce Fullwood getting his podium there in third place, and a big shout out as well to Brad Jones Racing in general, because that team has been down in the dumps. They normally go strong at the start of a new generation of supercar, but that hasn't really been the case, particularly this year, and that team has been soul searching off track. But they repaid all that hard work with a great result today, not only for Bryce Fullwood but also Andre Heimgartner, who was also in the top 10. But behind those top 3 there was drama and controversy. In fact, you guys know I like to put some polls up and get your thoughts on different incidents as they unfold. By the time I was posting one poll, there was yet another thing happening on track that I then also had to try and catch up and get your thoughts on as well. There was just so much happening. It was really entertaining, and we're going to delve into some of those incidents in the second half of this video and pick apart who I think was right and wrong in some of those situations. But before we do that, I don't want any of that to overshadow just how much I enjoyed today's race. It was good, hard racing that I thoroughly enjoyed, and I think all the drivers, regardless of where you think they fall in some of these incidents, should be commended for just how hard and entertaining they were today on the track. It was a great race for us to watch as fans. Alright, I picked 3 incidents to delve into specifically, starting off with, I think, what is the more cut and dry one, and then we'll gradually get a little bit more controversial as the video goes on. Let's start off with the easy one though. Kostecki found himself in the wars today, having a collision with Davey Reynolds at the hairpin. He was ultimately deemed at fault for that one, getting a 15-second penalty, but there was more hurt to come. He actually sped in the pit lane during the safety car pit stops, and then while exiting his bay in that same pit stop, he collided with the other Team 18 car in Mark Winterbottom. It was a bit of bad luck for all involved, and Kostecki got 2 additional penalties on top of that 15-second. He got 2 drive-through penalties, in fact, which really tore his race apart, but I think, given the circumstances, I think pretty fair for those incidents. So Kostecki will no doubt be pretty frustrated with how today unfolded, but I think he and the Erebus outfit can be a little bit encouraged by some of the car pace they've seen today, because they have been up and down like a yo-yo throughout this season so far. Our second incident was the biggest one in terms of crash damage this weekend. We saw a very nasty collision between Aaron Love and Jaxon Evans from the BJR team. This one happened on the changeover from one lap to another. Evans was fully alongside Aaron Love going down the main straight on the outside as they were approaching turn 1, but they interlocked wheels as Aaron Love moved over on him, and Evans found himself in the wall in a big way. There was actually a fairly substantial amount of damage to their car, a lot more than I anticipated when I first saw it pop up on the TV. This one for me was very much Aaron Love's fault. Jaxon Evans was fully alongside, and while you could argue it's always a risky spot to put your car in that position, we've seen plenty of moves be pulled off there before successfully. So it was not unreasonable in the slightest for him to attempt that one. And to be honest, the collision took place before they even reached turn 1. Aaron Love just misjudged, I think, how much space he had to move across and open up that turn 1 corner, and unfortunately there was an interlock of the wheels that fired Jaxon Evans in that concrete wall quite hard. I'm always mindful to go too hard on a young talent in the sport. We know just how hard the main game is in supercars, but I can't help but wonder if there's a bit of hesitation building in Aaron Love's future at Blanchard Racing Team. Given the starts of the season that he's had, he had multiple accidents at the Bathurst 500, and I love his full send approach to driving. We saw a 720 spin during the Saturday practice session for him. He just goes hard, which is thoroughly entertaining, but you can't help but feel he needs to dial it back a little bit. That said, he also needs to get some stronger results, and it's hard to drive safer but also faster. And when you consider the challenges that team are having as a whole with car pace, including his very experienced teammate James Courtney, it's a really tough spot for a rookie to be in. I asked you guys what you thought of Aaron Love's prospects of staying on the grid in 2025. Only a few people had the chance to vote, but 67% feel that he won't be on the grid in 2025 at the current rate of performance from him. 33% thinks he will manage to cling on, and Blanchard Racing Team did come out just a few weeks ago reinforcing their support for him, especially given the lack of competitive machinery that they're being able to give him recently. He's got a big opportunity though to make a statement in the final 4 races of the year, and fingers crossed that he and Blanchard Racing Team more generally can start to turn their season around. Alright, let's finish up with the juicy stuff, and Tommy Randle versus the world. It felt like it kicked off in the final 5th of that race with his battle with Will Brown. Thomas Randle sent a move down the inside at the hairpin and ultimately made contact with Will Brown at the apex. Now, you guys know me, I love a bit of door bashing, I love wheel-to-wheel action where the drivers get their elbows out against each other, but for me this one was a little bit too much of a send by Tommy Randle. He wasn't far enough up alongside, in my opinion, at the point of contact, of course being the rear quarter of Brown's car. That allowed him to get alongside and side by side down the back straight, where personally I feel Tommy should have backed out of that one at that point and reset and had another go, given how that previous corner played out. However, he pushed on. That pretty much upset Will Brown, who started crowding him along that back straight. They had a good little tense battle up to turn 6, and once they got there, Will Brown properly returned serve, this time bumping Randle wide, which saw Brown back up the inside, and ultimately he was able to escort Randle wide at turn 7, who did a very good job, by the way, to avoid an accident. He just ran out on the grey. He wasn't pushed off the road, he just sort of fell off the road, but managed to get back on the tarmac. At the time of recording, I believe Race Control have let this one go, which I think is the right decision, letting these drivers settle it out on track. As I said, I think Thomas was a bit too ambitious at turn 4. Will Brown was certainly at the limit of his retaliation, the crowding and the bumping at 6, but I think they equalised each other out in the end. 53% of you also feel like they equalised each other out. The next majority think Tommy Randle was predominantly at fault, and there is still 18% of you that feel Will Brown has something to answer for after that one. That wasn't the end of the drama though between Thomas Randle and the Red Bulls. Just a few laps later, Will Brown and Brock Feeney were starting to have their own tussle for 2nd and 3rd on the racetrack when Tommy Randle came up a little bit too hot into the hairpin, locked his brakes and spun Brock Feeney around. I think that incident wasn't purely just red mist on the part of Tommy Randle from his incident and run-in with Will Brown. I think he was actually just caught off guard a little bit with how much the two Red Bulls slowed each other up, but he was no doubt at fault, and he did admit that, to be fair to him. The moment he got out of the car and was interviewed, Thomas Randle, I think in a sign of maturity, in fact, was able to separate his frustration with the Will Brown incident and also his clash with Brock Feeney, very much putting his hand up for the latter one. Randle managed to get a trifecta of incidents though before the checkered flag. He had a run-in with Andre Heimgartner, who's also seeing his fair bit of action this weekend. Heimgartner was trying to go around the outside once again at the turn 4 hairpin, and Thomas Randle unfortunately moved over on him, not quite giving him just enough room in my opinion. So I think Randle while it was marginal, I think has to put his hand up for that one as well. So no doubt a disappointing day for Thomas Randle, a day that showed so much promise after that pole position, but unfortunately it just came unstuck for him, and I think a bit of desperation crept into his driving in the end. But alright, I've already hinted that I thoroughly enjoyed this weekend of racing as a Supercars fan. In fact, it's only my second race, I believe, to get a 5 out of 5 star rating. I really enjoyed that. I know it was a bit messy and a bit scrappy, but that's how I like my Supercars racing. So this one is 5 out of 5 stars for me. Really enjoyed it. For you guys, very positive as well, though 62% was the majority of the votes at 4 stars there, followed by 5 stars, 24%, and 3 stars making up the rest of the votes. As for a few thoughts from you guys, first one here from Daniel saying it was hard racing and great seeing that stuff. That was in reference to the battle between Brown and Randle, which I, again, thoroughly enjoyed seeing the drivers settle that one on the track. Second comment here from Jake saying it's a shame that all these rivalries from this weekend will burn out and be forgotten by Sandown, Heimgartner and Winterbottom, Kostecki and Reynolds, Randle and the Red Bull guys. He makes a really good point here. We talk a lot about the need for more Supercars racing, not only because we want to see cars on track more often, but also for the continuity of the championship and the storylines. When you have these big gaps between events, these storylines tend to fade away, and you have to remind yourself what happened at the previous event, where the rivalries are, and if they indeed still exist after so much time. So yeah, another reason why we need more rounds on the calendar. We'll finish up with a quick snapshot of the championship. The championship did close up after Saturday's race and then cooled off a little bit after today's action, but it's still Will Brown leading the way, which has Mostert very much in contention now there in second, Brock Feeney in third, Cameron Waters in fourth, and Matthew Payne in fifth. On the team side, Red Bull still have that big advantage out in front, but WAU are now starting to feel the pressure from Tickford as we set our sights on the Enduro, so just another storyline for us to follow. So with all that racing and rivalry in the bag, I cannot wait for the next chapter of this year's championship, which is of course the Penrite Oval Sandown 500 taking place September 20 to 22. I cannot wait to see how things unfold when we've got the endurance length races, co-drivers in the mix, and hopefully some of these rivalries continue to build. I'd love to see your thoughts down there in the comments below. Remember to treat people like your trackside, and I'll see you in my next video very, very soon.